Riven Calder tightened his grip on the welding torch, his boots crunching against the dusty metal floor of the old asteroid station. The lights above flickered, casting long, trembling shadows along the narrow corridors. He had been sent to repair the station's aging reactor systems, nothing more. He expected silence, routine, and the usual hum of machinery. But as he stepped deeper into the station, an unusual vibration ran through the floor, faint but persistent, like something trapped and alive. He paused, listening. The hum grew stronger near the sealed cells in the lower levels. Most of the station's cells had been abandoned for decades, left to corrode with rust and dust. Signs of decay covered the walls. Some of the doors were partially open, showing nothing but shadows. Yet one cell at the far end of the hallway vibrated with a strange, low energy. It was sealed tight, but the force behind it pressed outward, demanding attention. Riven frowned. He had no reason to enter the cell block. Security warnings flashed on the old monitors, but the system was barely functional. Something inside called to him, urgent and alive. Just a mechanic, he muttered to himself. What could be in a dead station like this? When he reached the door, he noticed deep scratches across the metal, as if something large had been trying to escape for years. The electronic lock was cracked and sparking, and the seal had weakened. Riven's curiosity got the better of him. He placed a hand on the door and, with a hiss of released pressure, it slid open. The smell hit him first. It was sharp, metallic, and mixed with something like smoke. He coughed, stepping inside. The room was dark, but a faint glow came from the corner, where a massive shape was curled on the floor. Riven froze. His heart raced. It was alive, enormous, and wounded. The creature lifted its head slowly, revealing two glowing amber eyes that burned with intelligence and fear. Scales shimmered under the dim light, but they were cracked and dull. She was pregnant. Her belly was large and round, trembling with weak shivers. She had been left to die. Riven's breath caught. "Easy, easy," he whispered, more to himself than to the dragon. He dropped his torch and approached carefully, noting the chains and broken restraints that had once held her tightly. The dragon hissed softly, not aggressively, but with warning. Riven paused. He had never touched a dragon before. He had only heard stories. But she was dying and he could feel it. He knelt, inspecting the wounds along her side. The scales were cracked, bleeding in thin streaks. Something had clearly attacked her before she had been locked away. Riven's hands worked quickly, tearing cloth from his jacket to make bandages. His experience as a mechanic, fixing broken machines, suddenly applied in a way he never imagined. He treated her body like he would a machine, careful and methodical, patching wounds and stopping the bleeding. She watched him with her glowing eyes, unblinking but not hostile. He could feel her pain, and somehow he knew she understood he meant no harm. Minutes stretched into hours as he worked, improvising tools and using what scraps he had. Every small success, stopping a wound from bleeding, clearing debris from her scales, made her shift slightly, testing her strength. Riven realized then that the dragon was not only wounded but abandoned. The station's records were sparse, but he could see the signs of neglect. Someone had locked her here intentionally, leaving her to die alone. He clenched his fists. Humans had abandoned her, but he would not. The sound of the station's life support systems groaning made him shiver. The old asteroid station was unstable. Any mistake could collapse the floors, cut the air supply, or trigger alarms. But he stayed. He had no plan for moving her yet. He could barely lift himself in the corridors, let alone a massive pregnant dragon. Yet he knew he could not leave. The dragon hissed softly as if sensing his thoughts. Her wings twitched, though they were weak and ragged. Riven spoke to her in quiet tones, not knowing if she could understand his words. "I won't let them do this to you," he said. "Not here. Not ever." As he finished securing her minor injuries, a tremor shook the station. Dust fell from the ceiling and a low rumble ran through the floor. The cell's containment systems, old and failing, sparked dangerously. Riven jumped, pulling a cable from the wall to stabilize the power. The dragon's body reacted, shifting slightly, muscles tense. She was alive, fighting for herself. And now she was fighting alongside him. Riven's mind raced. He had saved machines in worse conditions, but never a living, thinking, breathing creature of this scale. Every instinct screamed for him to retreat. The galaxy did not care about her, and helping her could make him a target. But when he looked at her eyes, he felt something stir inside, a connection older than anything he knew. She was not just a creature to be fixed, she was a life worth defending. He spent the next hours carefully making the cell more habitable, rerouting power, fixing broken water lines, and improvising heat and light. All the while, the dragon lay mostly still, her breathing slow but steady. Riven worked in silence, understanding that words were useless here. Actions mattered. Every repair, every adjustment was a promise. He would not abandon her no matter what came next. As night, or what passed for night inside the station, fell, Riven finally leaned back against the wall, exhausted. The dragon lifted her head, observing him. There was a moment, a flicker in her eyes, that seemed almost like recognition. She was not just alive, she had survived because he chose to act when others had chosen nothing. Somewhere deep inside the cell, something shifted. The dragon twitched and a faint glow pulsed from her belly. Riven caught it. Life was still coming even in this abandoned, decaying place. And in that moment he realized that whatever danger awaited outside these walls, whatever authorities or forces might come, he could not let her die. Not now, not ever. For the first time in his life, Riven understood the weight of choice. In a universe that had written her off, he had chosen differently. And that choice would not only change him but the galaxy itself. Riven worked through the night, his hands aching, his clothes stained with oil and blood. The dragon lay quietly in the corner of the cell, breathing shallowly, her glowing amber eyes tracking every move he made. He had never thought he would spend a night inside a prison cell, caring for a creature so massive and alive. But here he was, and every instinct in his body told him he could not leave her to die. The dragon's name, he would later learn, was Sailthra of the Ember Vale, though she had not yet spoken it. Her scales were cracked and dull, her wings damaged from years of confinement. She was pregnant, and Riven could feel the faint movements of her unborn child beneath his hands as he patched a torn membrane along her side. He worked with careful precision, improvising tools from broken panels, pipes, and scraps of metal. Every repair was a small victory, a way to give her hope she had not felt in months, maybe years. Riven's mind kept racing. He had been trained to fix engines, circuits, and machines, not living beings. Yet the principles were the same. Find what is broken, stabilize it, and keep it functioning. He applied the same patience and logic to Sailthra's injuries, cleaning deep gashes with a coolant solution and wrapping them with reinforced metal bandages he had fashioned from panels. When he adjusted the old life support line to deliver clean air to the cell, he felt her body relax slightly, a subtle acknowledgement of his efforts. Hours passed. Outside, the station creaked and groaned. Rusted panels shifted and dust fell from the ceiling. He could hear the faint hum of failing machinery echoing through the corridors. Any moment, a panel could give way, a pipe could burst, or the station could lose power entirely. Yet he stayed. Humans had abandoned this place long ago, leaving the dragon to die alone, but Riven refused to follow their example. He was not here to abandon, he was here to fix, to protect. Sailthra stirred, her head rising slightly. She hissed softly, a low sound that seemed more like warning than aggression. Riven froze, hands mid-motion. He did not flinch. He whispered, "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here to help." His voice was calm, though his heart pounded. The dragon's eyes softened a fraction, and her wings twitched, trying to stretch despite their weakness. He realized she had been confined so long that even small movements were painful. He spent hours improvising a better resting space for her. Using spare metal plates and old crates, he created a platform that supported her massive body and made it easier for her to lie down without straining her wings. He patched a broken coolant line so the cell temperature would remain stable, knowing that the heat was critical for her survival and for the unborn hatchling inside her. Every adjustment, every repair, was done quietly, methodically, with a focus that left no room for mistakes. Riven began talking to her, though he doubted she could understand his words. "You're not alone anymore," he said as he tightened a bandage. "I won't let them finish what they started. We'll get through this." The dragon tilted her head slightly, watching him. There was a spark in her eyes, something almost like recognition, or maybe it was trust. Riven did not know if she could comprehend humans, but he felt a bond forming. It was subtle, but it was there, and it strengthened his resolve. Time passed in long stretches of silence and careful work. He cleaned the dirt and dried blood from her scales, fashioned splints for her wings, and even rerouted some old station wiring to create a low, warm light that would keep her comfortable. He checked her breathing constantly, noting the faint movements of her unborn child beneath her skin. Riven realized that the dragon was more than a living creature. She was a mother, and she was fighting not just for herself but for her child. That thought fueled him, gave him energy when exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him. Around midday, Riven paused for a moment, leaning against the wall. His hands shook, his back ached, and his clothes were soaked with sweat and grime. He looked at Sailthra, who had shifted slightly, her body responding to his care. He smiled faintly despite his exhaustion. "You're stronger than they gave you credit for," he whispered. "And so am I guess." She blinked slowly, her amber eyes meeting his. For the first time, Riven felt a true understanding pass between them. They were allies now, bound by the simple fact that one had chosen to save the other. The station groaned, and a sudden vibration ran through the floor. Dust fell from the ceiling and old pipes rattled. Riven's pulse quickened. The cell's containment systems, already failing, could collapse at any moment. If the station lost power, she would die instantly. He grabbed a set of spare wires and connected them to the failing grid, rerouting energy to stabilize the room. Sparks flew and heat washed over him, but he did not stop. Sailthra's wings twitched again, stronger this time, as if sensing that help had arrived. By evening, the cell had transformed. It was no longer just a cage. It was a place of care and survival. Sailthra rested, breathing steadily, while Riven sat nearby, exhausted but alert. He watched her, noting every small twitch, every shift of her tail, every movement of the unborn hatchling. The bond between them was undeniable now. Humans had abandoned her. The galaxy had written her off as dead. But here, in a crumbling asteroid station, one human mechanic had chosen differently. Riven realized that what he was doing was bigger than fixing a broken creature. He was defying the galaxy's judgment. Every adjustment he made, every bandage, every repair was a statement. That life mattered, that some beings were worth saving even when the rest of the universe did not care. And in that realization he felt a strange kind of pride. Night fell again in the station, though inside it felt alive. The low hum of machinery and the soft glow from makeshift lights gave the cell warmth and comfort. Sailthra stirred, rolling slightly to relieve pressure on her body. She hissed softly, but it was not fear or anger, it was life. And Riven knew that tomorrow the real challenges would come. Outside this cell, the galaxy would not forget her. They would come for the dragon and her unborn child. But for now, in this small, abandoned corner of space, a human mechanic had proven that even the smallest act of care could mean survival. He leaned back against the wall, rubbing his sore hands. "We'll make it," he whispered. "I promise. No matter what." Sailthra blinked slowly, her eyes reflecting the soft lights. For the first time in her life she felt safe, if only for a moment. And Riven, exhausted but determined, knew that saving her was only the beginning. Riven had not slept. His muscles ached, and his hands were cut and raw from hours of repairing and caring for Sailthra. Yet he did not stop. The dragon lay curled on the makeshift platform he had built, her body tense but steadier than before. Something inside her shifted constantly, subtle movements that told him the hatchling was alive. The unborn child was small, fragile, and yet, against all odds, it was fighting to survive just as fiercely as she was. Around midday, Sailthra's body tensed sharply. Her wings twitched uncontrollably, and a low rumble escaped her throat. Riven froze. He had never witnessed a dragon give birth, but instinct told him this was the moment. He knelt beside her, hands trembling slightly. He had patched her wounds, stabilized her environment, and rerouted failing power lines. Now all he could do was be ready to help however he could. The first contractions hit, and Sailthra hissed, a long, low sound that vibrated through the metal floor. She shifted, struggling to find a comfortable position despite the chains and remnants of broken restraints that still clung to the edges of her body. Riven quickly worked to clear the surrounding area, lifting debris and making space. He spoke quietly, though he doubted she understood his words. "I'm here. You're not alone. You can do this." The hours that followed were slow and tense. Sweat dripped from Riven's brow as he guided Sailthra through each contraction. The dragon's breathing was ragged but controlled. She used instinct, patience, and strength he could barely comprehend. He cleaned her wounds again and again, adjusted her makeshift bedding, and whispered encouragement. Each movement of the hatchling inside her was a reminder that life could exist even in the harshest circumstances. Then it happened. The first hatchling emerged, wet, small and trembling, unlike anything Riven had seen before. Its scales were soft and glimmering faintly, and its eyes, though tiny, opened immediately. It shivered in the cold air of the cell, and instinctively Riven wrapped it in a piece of cloth to warm it. Sailthra hissed softly, but not in anger. She lowered her head, watching him carefully, and then nudged her child with her snout. Riven realized something strange. The hatchling reacted not to fear, not to dominance, but to his presence. Its tiny head lifted toward him, as if recognizing that he had helped its mother survive. He felt a shiver run down his spine. This bond was ancient, instinctual, and somehow it knew him. He looked at Sailthra, whose amber eyes seemed to shine brighter than ever. She had survived the galaxy's cruelty, and now her child had survived as well. The moment was broken by a sudden rumble from the station. Dust fell from the ceiling and the lights flickered dangerously. Riven's pulse quickened. The old asteroid station was unstable, and he knew that if it collapsed or lost power, both dragon and hatchling could die instantly. He grabbed the nearest wires and patched the failing energy line again, sparks flying around him. The dragon's wings twitched once more, stronger this time, and she shifted slightly to help stabilize herself. Hours passed. The hatchling, small and fragile, clung to life under his care. Riven kept adjusting her warmth, feeding her small doses of liquid nutrients he improvised from the station's limited supplies. He watched her every movement, noting each flick of her tiny wings, each blink of her miniature eyes. The connection between him and the hatchling deepened with every passing moment. It was as if she knew he had saved her life and that of her mother. Meanwhile, Sailthra began to recover. Her breathing slowed, her body relaxed, and her strength returned incrementally. She shifted carefully to rest beside her hatchling, curling protectively around it. Riven moved back slightly, giving them space, yet remaining close enough to react if needed. He had learned the hard way that dragons were not machines. They were thinking, feeling, and intelligent. Every small action mattered. Night fell in the station again, but the cell felt alive. Warmth from the improvised heat lines combined with the gentle breathing of mother and child created a fragile sanctuary. Riven leaned back against a wall, exhausted, watching the tiny hatchling wriggle toward Sailthra's chest. He could feel the ancient instinct in the dragon, guiding her to care for her young, and he understood that this child would survive not just because he saved her, but because she had the strongest protector of all, her mother. Yet danger still loomed. The station had been abandoned for years, but someone, or something, would notice the power fluctuations. Authorities, bounty hunters, or researchers who had labeled the dragon and her child as non-viable would not remain silent. Riven knew they would come, expecting to find a dead dragon and her lost offspring. Instead, they would find a mother and child alive, protected by one human who had chosen to act when the galaxy had chosen nothing. The hatchling shifted again, tiny claws brushing against Riven's hand. He smiled faintly despite exhaustion. This creature, so small and fragile, was a miracle. Life that should not have existed was thriving because he had made the choice to help. And as he looked at Sailthra, whose eyes glimmered with trust and gratitude, he realized that what they had now was more than survival. It was the beginning of something that the galaxy could not control or predict. Riven stayed awake all night, tending to mother and child. Every hour brought small victories, a deeper breath, a stronger heartbeat, a flicker of energy in the hatchling's tiny wings. He spoke quietly to them, not knowing if they understood, but believing that his presence mattered. By dawn, the hatchling had grown noticeably stronger, and Sailthra could move without as much pain. The bond between human and dragon family had solidified. For the first time, Riven understood the full weight of his actions. He had rescued a creature the galaxy had abandoned, assisted in the birth of a child that should not exist, and defied forces far stronger than himself. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like a mechanic doing what needed to be done. Yet in the quiet of the cell, with mother and child alive and breathing, he realized that even the smallest act of courage could change the course of life in ways he could not yet imagine. And as the first light of the distant sun filtered through the cracked walls of the station, Riven knew that the challenges were only beginning. Outside, the galaxy would come to reclaim what it had labeled lost. But inside this cell, life had taken hold. The child that should not exist had been born, and it had chosen to survive. And humans, it seemed, were the first to notice the value of life where others saw only loss. The station trembled under the weight of approaching ships. Riven had noticed strange energy readings for hours, but now the sound of engines vibrating through the metal corridors was impossible to ignore. He looked at Sailthra, curled around her hatchling, and realized the danger they were in. Whoever had abandoned her would not forget, and the galaxy would come to claim what it had labeled lost. Riven tightened his grip on a heavy metal rod he had salvaged, knowing it was almost useless against ships armed with energy weapons. But it was better than nothing. Sailthra stirred beside him, her eyes glowing brighter, sensing the tension. The hatchling chirped softly, tiny but alive, and Riven felt a surge of determination. He would not let them take this family. The first ship breached the station's outer hull, and alarms blared. Lights flickered violently, and dust fell from the ceiling. Riven helped Sailthra move closer to a reinforced corner, hoping the makeshift barriers would offer some protection. The dragon hissed low, a sound that vibrated the floor. He understood it as warning, as preparation. The galaxy expected fear. Instead, they would meet resistance. The first team of enforcers arrived through the side hatch. Their armor was sleek, alien, and dangerous. They carried scanners and weapons, expecting an empty cell. Riven stepped forward, blocking the way, holding the metal rod like a shield. "You will not touch them," he said, voice steady despite pounding heart. The enforcers laughed. "Step aside, human. This creature and her offspring are property of the Galactic Council. They are to be terminated." One of them raised a weapon. Riven did not flinch. He had no choice but to stand. Every instinct told him to run, but he could not abandon life again. Not here, not now. Sailthra's body shifted, her massive wings unfurling despite weakness. Sparks from the damaged power lines reflected off her scales, making her glow faintly. The enforcers hesitated. They had expected a dying prisoner, not a dragon who could still fight, not one who was protected by a human so determined he would not step aside. Riven yelled, "You will not take her. Not today." He swung the rod, more to buy time than to attack. The enforcers fired, energy bolts bouncing harmlessly off Sailthra's wings. She roared, a deep echoing sound that rattled the walls and shook the floor. Dust fell everywhere and the enforcers stumbled, surprised by her strength. The hatchling chirped again and something unexpected happened. Its small, glowing body pulsed, tiny energy waves spreading through the room. Old systems in the station, long dormant, responded. Lights flickered, doors slammed shut, and sparks shot across the metal floors. The enforcers' equipment malfunctioned. Machines they had relied on suddenly refused to work. Riven realized the hatchling was triggering some kind of ancient system built into the station. Dragons had left these safeguards long ago, perhaps to protect their kind. And somehow humans, through his care, had activated them. The galaxy's best technology was failing because life that had been abandoned was fighting back. Sailthra rose fully, wings stretching, her massive body filling the cell. She hissed again, louder this time, and the enforcers stepped back, unsure of how to respond. They had planned for a dead creature, not this. And the human in front of her was not retreating. He had chosen to protect life when the galaxy had chosen destruction. Riven moved closer to the dragon, ready to defend her. Every strike, every movement, every small repair he had done over the last days now mattered. The station trembled under the combined energy of the dragon, the hatchling, and failing systems. He knew he could not fight them all physically, but he had never needed to. He had something more powerful, determination and the bond they shared. One of the enforcers tried to strike, but Sailthra's massive tail swung out, knocking the weapon aside. Another stepped forward, scanning for weaknesses, but the hatchling's pulse caused alarms to flash violently across their suits. Energy shields failed, weapons sparking and shorting out. Riven realized the station itself had become an ally. Life and care had awakened something the galaxy had ignored for too long. Hours seemed to stretch as they held their ground. The enforcers regrouped outside the cell, trying to figure out how to breach it again. Riven did not move. Sailthra stayed alert, protecting her hatchling, her eyes glowing with intelligence and focus. The two of them, human and dragon, had become more than the sum of their parts. Together, they were a force that the galaxy had not anticipated. Finally, a message came through the enforcer's communicator: "Stand down. The dragon mother and offspring cannot be taken by force. Retreat and report." Riven blinked, shocked. Sailthra hissed, and the hatchling chirped again, sending another small pulse through the station. Somehow the galaxy had recognized that their rules did not apply here. Life that had been abandoned could not be ignored. Riven sank to his knees, exhaustion hitting him fully. Sailthra lowered herself beside him, curling around her hatchling. He looked at them, his hands still shaking from adrenaline and relief. The fight was over for now, but he knew it would not end permanently. Others would come. Others would try to take what had survived. But for this moment they had won. He understood something crucial. The galaxy had labeled them weak, non-viable, abandoned. Yet here they were alive because he had chosen to act. Humans, in their quiet stubbornness, had done what no one else would. He had fixed what others had broken, protected what others had ignored, and in doing so had created a family that would survive against all odds. Sailthra nuzzled the hatchling gently, and the tiny creature chirped, curling against its mother. Riven reached out, touching both of them lightly. He did not need words to understand the bond they shared. Together they had survived. Together they had proven that life, no matter how small or unexpected, mattered more than the rules of the galaxy. As the station settled into quiet again, Riven realized that the real challenge was not just surviving the enforcers. It was proving to the galaxy that humans, through care, courage, and stubbornness, could change the fate of life itself. He did not yet know what would come next, but he knew one thing. He would not abandon Sailthra or her hatchling. Not now, not ever. Riven sat against the cold metal wall, watching Sailthra and her hatchling rest. The station had finally quieted, though the hum of failing machinery reminded him that this peace was fragile. He had expected enemies to return, but for now they had retreated. The galaxy had been forced to recognize something it had long ignored, that life, once abandoned, could fight back in ways no one anticipated. Sailthra lowered her massive head, amber eyes meeting Riven's. There was no fear, no aggression, only recognition. He had saved her life, helped bring her child into the world, and protected them both against forces far stronger than himself. The bond was undeniable, silent, and powerful. The dragon's wings stretched slowly, careful now, showing strength returning. Her hatchling chirped softly, tiny eyes shining in the dim light, a symbol of survival against impossible odds. Riven's hands shook slightly as he reached toward them. "You're safe now," he whispered, not knowing if she could understand him. He didn't need words. Her eyes, the tilt of her head, the gentle exhale of her breath told him she understood. Humans were nothing in the eyes of the galaxy, fragile, weak, expendable. Yet here he was, and because of his choice, a dragon and her child lived. That choice would not be forgotten. Days passed in the station. Riven repaired more systems, restored power lines, and stabilized the environment for the dragon family. He scavenged supplies from old storage rooms, finding nutrients for the hatchling and healing supplies for Sailthra. Slowly the dragon's strength returned. She moved with more confidence, wings flaring slightly, tail sweeping the floor carefully. Riven observed, learning the rhythm of her body, understanding her needs through careful attention. One evening, as distant stars reflected through the broken panels of the station, Sailthra spoke. Her voice was deep, resonant, and filled the room in a way that made Riven instinctively step back. "Human," she said, her words slow and careful, "you are remembered." Riven blinked, uncertain if he had understood correctly. "Remembered?" he asked quietly. She nodded, though her massive head barely moved. "Among my kind, humans are often unknown, small, weak. But you protect. You act when all others abandon. You choose life when it is easier to ignore it. Dragons will remember." Riven felt a chill run down his spine. He had never sought recognition, reward, or glory. He had only done what he felt was right. Yet Sailthra's words carried weight that stretched beyond the station, beyond the galaxy. His actions had left an impression that could survive generations. The hatchling wriggled, chirping softly. Riven reached out, touching the tiny scales with gentle fingers. Its warmth was surprising, a spark of life he had never imagined surviving such a harsh universe. The bond between them was immediate. The hatchling did not fear him. It responded to his presence, recognizing him as the first human who had protected it and its mother. Riven realized that the connection between human and dragon was deeper than survival. It was respect, trust, and a quiet understanding of value where others saw none. Weeks passed, and the station remained a fragile haven. Outside, the galaxy had not forgotten, but the enforcers did not return. Word spread quietly, carried by whispers among alien traders, bounty hunters, and distant colonies. Humans had acted differently. They had not killed, they had not abandoned, they had not counted life as expendable. They had protected. The galaxy began to notice. Sailthra and her hatchling grew stronger every day. The dragon learned to trust Riven fully, allowing him to move close, even to touch her injured wings as they healed. The hatchling chirped and wriggled at his presence, learning, observing, and bonding. Riven could see the pride in Sailthra's gaze as her child developed, and he understood that dragons would not forget this lesson. Humans had done what the galaxy refused to do, they had valued life. One morning, a faint ripple of energy passed through the station. Riven looked up to see Sailthra rising, wings fully extended now, body powerful and alive. She nudged him gently with her snout. He felt a connection pass between them, unspoken yet absolute. "We leave soon," her voice resonated, not demanding but declaring. "The galaxy may watch. We remember what you have done. Humans are different." Riven nodded, unsure if he would survive leaving the station, but he did not hesitate. He had grown accustomed to life with them, had learned the rhythm of their breaths, the weight of their presence. He had acted when it mattered most. He was not a warrior, not a hero, yet in the eyes of dragons he had become legend. As they moved through the station toward the outer hangar, The hatchling chirped loudly, wings flaring slightly. Sailthra's massive body glowed faintly in the dim light, her eyes locked on Riven. The galaxy might not understand yet, but it would. Humans were not the strongest. They did not possess unmatched firepower or ancient knowledge. But they protected when it mattered. They acted when the universe turned away. They chose life. And dragons, ancient and intelligent, remembered such things. Riven watched the stars beyond the hangar. He felt something he had never felt before. Quiet pride, not for himself but for what humans could do. The galaxy had always overlooked them, underestimated them, but life that should have ended now thrived because of one human's choice. Sailthra spread her wings, lifting the hatchling carefully beside her. With a powerful push, she rose into space, Riven following as best he could in the station's small shuttle. As they disappeared into the starfield, Riven realized the truth: humans would be remembered. Not for conquest, not for war, but for the simple, stubborn act of protecting what others had abandoned. Dragons would carry this memory, teaching their kind, spreading knowledge across the stars. Life mattered. And humans, in their quiet way, had proven it. In the silent void of space, Riven sat in the shuttle, watching Sailthra and her hatchling soar through the stars. The universe was vast, dangerous, and uncaring. Yet for the first time he understood that courage, care, and choice could make a difference. Dragons would remember. The galaxy would remember. And perhaps, one day humanity's quiet legacy would shape the future in ways no one had dared imagine. He smiled faintly, exhaustion and relief washing over him. They had survived. Against all odds, the dragon and her child lived. And in the memory of these ancient, intelligent beings, humans had proven themselves worthy. The quiet strength of one mechanic had echoed across the stars, and dragons would not forget.